What does it say I have process? What did you do?
Nothing. I simply combined it by putting it through. I didn't do.
You did something to me.
I didn't do.
You killed me.
I didn't do.
It's 1080p. It's like 15 megabytes.
I didn't do.
Oh no, this is mine.
All right, so let's get started today. So the midterm, you guys should have your midterm grades in your inbox soon or shortly or within the next few seconds, minutes. So let's just talk about the midterm briefly. So Albert and I, we had the recordings from the day in lecture, and then of course those people who weren't able to present sent us their recordings. So not only did we have, what happened in lecture on Zoom, because we did record that. Hopefully everybody knew that since you were sharing via Zoom. And we have then the recordings sent over through groups that didn't have an opportunity to present in class. And then of course we have your code as well. So as you can see, the grading here is based off of, the grading criteria that was posted on the midterm. So mostly what we looked at was, how well you guys were prepared when you came in here. And timing, some groups did go over time, and there were, issues with that. And then lastly, we also, because we had your code and we saw you execute it here, we also took a look at your code, during the grading, and we needed the code to include exactly what was detailed above from both the custom module and CLI. So that's the last bullet point there. So sort of to touch on what that is, we were really looking for your midterm to only be around 200 lines of code. And that may be like shocking to some people, but I'm not really sure why, because it only asks for you to implement one search feature, right? We ask that you implement one search feature, so just searching either a TV show, a restaurant, a city, just one item, and to create a custom module to support that search. A lot of groups went well over and above, and if you did that because you're interested in learning JavaScript and you were trying to better understand the language, we appreciate that. But also, there were some concerns as following that. There are a lot of code that just didn't simply seem to understand promises and how they work. There was a lot of code that didn't understand the difference between let and const, and a lot of misdeclarations in that. There was a lot of code and some code explanations that were just simply incorrect. And and finally, I think that the biggest thing that we saw was, we asked for you guys to implement a custom module, and a lot of what we saw was you just simply took the deck of cards, module, and you just pasted your own URL in there. I mean, that's not really a lot of work, right? I guess I'm a little thrown by that. I don't want to speak to Albert, but I feel like he's probably a little thrown by that too, that you didn't sit down and take the time to say, okay, well, here's my API, and exactly what do I need to do and fetch and search in order to build this custom module. You literally took things that, you know, were written in class and just pasted your own text. And then you tried to explain to me what you were doing. Well, clearly I know what you were doing because I wrote that code. So, you know, there were some points deducted for some of these things. We're pretty, go ahead.
How many points was this out?
100, midterm 100 points, yeah. Yeah, 100 points, sorry, I guess I thought, yeah, 100 points is the midterm. So there were some points deducted for that as well. And in terms of, you know, discussing your grade, we're happy to discuss it, but there's no like regrades or, you know, I certainly don't need you guys coming up here to re-explain to me what you didn't explain during the midterm because I wrote to you how you should have explained it or what the correct way was, because now you're just explaining to me what I explained to you, which seems really just crazy in my eyes. So, you know, if you have a question about your grade, I'm happy to answer it. But it's not really, you know, this is not a law class. Your grade for your midterm's not up for debates. And you're not going to win any points with Albert or I trying to debate your grade. Some team members in the groups may have lost a little bit more points based on their presentation. So if your group doesn't all have the same grade, some groups have the same grade. Some groups might have a couple of team members with a lower or higher grade based off just how they explained the code or what somebody else lacked in explaining the code. You know, that was, your code explanation was sort of a personal part, so I can't change that either. So I guess that's all I really have to say on the midterm. Are there any like overarching questions on the midterm? Okay, no, I don't think there's any in Slack. No, there's none there. Okay, great. So, and the other reason why we didn't really want you to spend too much time, or we asked you implement one search feature and the CLI here, right, is because all that's going to get thrown away, right? As you can see, we're moving from, you know, the terminal and just using the node portion of things, and now you had several weeks learning about Vue.js, right? So spending a lot of time, you know, Albert and I did not want to mandate that you spend time writing hundreds of lines of code in a CLI that you're just going to basically throw away and for your final replace with a Vue.js portion. So, you know, that was another reason why we were really hoping that it would be fairly short in terms of your CLI and your JS file. So yeah, we'll have the midterm, we'll have the final requirements posted shortly, but you will be, you know, reusing your custom module. So if you lost points there, or, you know, if I had some notes in there that like basically just said you didn't do much, you just copied my file and you pasted your thing in there. You have some notes in there, you might want to go ahead and take a look at your custom module and see how you can actually customize it and tailor it to your API, because that is going to be reused for the final. And hopefully I don't see any, you know, final code where it's just literally another copy pasta of, you know, the code that, you know, is in the module now, or, you know, some other copy pasta code from the demos we do in class. You know, your idea of these projects in this midterm is for you to start, you know, piecing everything together, write the code yourself so that you have a clear understanding of, you know, not only JavaScript, but how the stack is working. You know, how is your backend talking to an API, and how is that communicating with the front end, whether that's a command line interface or whether that's, you know, a browser using Vue. So we'll get the final requirements out shortly as well. Are there any questions before we start the lecture on that?
Not related to, but so this is we have a project.
That's sort of the final / midterm thing. Yeah, this is the project. Oh, I went to the wrong place. This guy. Yeah. All right. So let's jump into today's lecture. So last week, Albert, you know, discussed components and working with Vue components. And And so we're going to build off of that. We're going to, use some components today. But, there's other ways to just communicate, to the browser other than just HTTP requests. There's WebSockets, right? And so WebSockets are a popular form of communication for any real-time application, and specifically chat apps, right? You need that real time, when you're texting your friend or you're messaging with your friends, you really don't want any delay. You're trying to ask them a question, or, you're trying to make a plan, and you're trying to get that information, as fast as possible. And the best way to communicate when you're trying to do real-time data, whether it's, a chat app, or you're trying to maybe poll and do like real-time posting of scores, like for your sports or whatnot, you want to use WebSockets. So we do have WebSockets, of course, in Node. That would, that's obviously part of the backend framework. And so WebSockets just provide this persistent connection between the server, which is going to be our Node server side, and the client, which in this case is going to be Vue. And so once that connection is established, there's no more communicating over HTTP. We're now communicating over TCP protocol. And since, this is a persistent connection, the connection is open and it's ongoing, the data is actually able to transform much more quickly. When you make an HTTP request, you sort of have to go through the same, steps with the server every time. You have to say, okay, well, I'm making a GET request, and this is the type of data that I'm asking for, and yes, I'm allowed to ask for it. So you don't have to make that handshake sort of negotiation. You've already done that when you've connected to the WebSocket. The line is now open. It's sort of like being on the phone, and now your communication is just happening as quickly as it can possibly happen, or as quickly as you can type and send. There are base WebSockets in Node, but just like a lot of things in Node, we use libraries. And we use Node modules, and the most popular Node module for real-time web application and sockets is Socket.io. It makes connecting via sockets, not only does Socket.io have a back-end portion that we can use inside of our server, it also has created a front-end portion that we can use inside of our browser. And since we're using the same library on both sides, there's no worrying about compatibility. We don't have to say like, okay, well, is this setting set? How are we actually talking to this guy? It's already, hooked up, and it's a very smooth flow. And so, like I said, it's two sides. You have the client side and you have your server side. And we're going to cover, some Socket.io today, of course, during our chat app demo. But if you're interested in digging into some of their unique features, you can look at the Socket.io docs. So to create a Node server that uses Socket.io is even not that difficult. It's actually a very, very simple process, just like a lot of things in Node are. So I know it's kind of hard to read, but I just wanted to inline some comments so you guys kind of know what's happening as we write this stuff in our demo today. So, here we have the Express framework. That's the same thing we're doing and we've always done in our Node servers, right? We require an Express. And then we initialize or instantiate the Express framework. We declare a variable called app. So far, so good. And now comes a little bit different part. We're going to reach in and use the HTTP module inside of Node for us already. We're going to create this new variable called server, because we're going to basically mount our Socket.io server inside. So we're going to require an HTTP, and we're going to use a server method, which actually takes an HTTP server as an argument. So it also kind of feels a little redundant, right? Like we've made this Express server, but then we bring in, HTTP, which can create a server, and we pass a server into something that actually accepts the server as an argument. And the only reason we're doing this is because we want all the features of Express inside of our HTTP server, right? So we don't want to, if we were just to use this line, well, this doesn't have a line number, but we'll pretend it's 3 right here. If we were just to use line 3 here, and just build in this server, we wouldn't be having all the power of Express behind it, right? We would just be stuck with this standard Node server. That's all we would have. So by requiring an HTTP and passing in the Express as the argument, we now just have created an HTTP server backed with the Express. And then this is our new code right here. We require in Socket.io, and Socket.io takes an argument to sort of initialize it, to instantiate it. And the requirement to Socket.io on the server side needs to be an actual server application. And so we're now passing server into that. And then we can this is a little bit of code from the time before where we're just requiring in our view front end, and when we can start our server with just server.listen. And so just these two new lines of code, really just these two, the other two are kind of the same. We're just creating a new HTTP server instance. We're instantiating that or initializing that with Express, and then we're passing that into our socket.io so that we can get socket.io inside of our server. So now we're able to make WebSocket connections using Express. So this is all I have for the slides because most of the work is actually done in the code demo. And I wanted to make that easy for you guys to follow along with, especially since there's a lab, not due today, but due this week. And so you could have some basis. So if you go to week 12 and you go to examples, you can see here I've uploaded just some mostly placeholders. So there's like this file's empty, we're gonna fill that one in. This file has most of the code that we just covered, but just some empty placeholders and a lot of HTML as well on the client side, so that you don't have to type a lot of this and you don't have to worry about this, as I'm discussing it. The HTML is just already present for you, and you don't have to, quickly type all these, open close brackets there. All right. So I'm going to go to the actual page here. Okay. So this, these files right now are the exact same ones that are on the CS 4220 week 12 set right there. So you can see here we have this server, and so far everything's really the same as before, right? We have Express, we have our path, we're requiring in our static directory to serve our view. We did that. I know it's been a while since we've done that. That was I think the week right before your midterm, week 8. So it's been 4 weeks since we've sort of looked at a server file like this. But now we want to bring in the other code that we have here. So just like before, we're going to do server equals require, and then we're going to do HTTP, and then that has a server method on it, as you can see, and we're just going to pass app right into that. And we do have a file here, and this file is going to contain all of our socket logic inside of it. And so it doesn't have anything going on too much inside of it right now, but since we know that we're going to be using this file for our socket logic, we do want to require that file in, right? So we can just require that file in by its path, so we can just say, it's in the same server, it's in the same level as server, and it's called sockets, so we can bring that in. And if we look at how it's exported, we can see it's a function. So we can see that it's exporting an anonymous function, and this function takes one argument, and that argument is server. And socket.io does need your server information to understand what's happening. So we're going to pass in server as an argument there. And then the only thing that we're going to change is, since we've created this new server instance here on line 7, is that big enough? Maybe I'll make it a little bigger. Since we've created this new server instance here on line 7, we need to change that for this server to actually listen. So this is all the work we're really doing here. So a lot of this was, like I said, old stuff from week 8, a couple of new things, line 7 and 10, and the small change on 12. So really the work for sockets is going to be happening in this file. I just like to separate things out. You could put all your socket and your IO information inside here, but me, I like separation of concerns. So since this is exporting a function that takes an argument of server, and we're passing our server into this function here, which is what we do right here, we don't need to declare a variable because we're not going to be doing anything with that variable. So we just simply, basically just calling the method straight out right there. So now that we're done that, we can use IO. So I already have that listed in my package.json. I have socket.io as a dependency. So when you download and install this, you can just do an npm install. You'll have that available to you as well. So IO is going to represent our socket.io. So we're going to require socket.io here. And just like we saw on the slide, socket.io accepts an argument. And that argument is as a server. It needs to know what server that it's going to actually bind these socket events to. And that is going to be our server that we created inside of server.js. Right there. All right. So now we can begin to sort of handle socket.io events. And let me go to this slide here. I don't want to remove, I just want to copy. So when you go to these docs, you get this, the API on how to use socket.io and on the server side, and you get the API docs on how to use socket.io on the client side. So a lot of these things that you're going to see me type are not necessarily, I didn't make up these functions or how socket.io works. I'm just simply using the API and the events that they're using here. And so one of the events is this connection. When socket.io receives a connection, in this case we're going to be connecting to our Vue client, it throws an event called connection. And so that's what we're going to be using here. So you have IO and then on and then connection. So the API is written to listen for this event, and then when this event happens in the background or inside of this library here, it's going to return, sorry, not server, it's going to return a socket object. That guy right there. So when somebody connects to our server via WebSockets, running on our local host, this method right here is going to be fired. And so if we're building a chat app, the first thing that we might want to do is handle events to allow the user to join the chat room. And so at this point, we're now creating event messages ourselves. So we've handled the base event message, which is connection. And so now we're able to create messages, our own socket messages. So I can say socket, and I'm going to create an event. And the event that I'm going to create, you could name it anything. You could literally name this anything. I'm going to name it join user, right? And so when this event happens, I'm going to expect to get a username from my client. So my client is going to say, hey, a user would like to join this chat room. And here, let me give you their username so that you know how to deal with them on the server side. So I'm going to say, okay, no problem. Thank you for this username. And then I'm going to be able to create something with this username. So since we're not using it, let's just take one step back before we keep diving deeper into the socket events. So we're not creating a database right now, right? We're just running a server. And while that server is on and running, it's like a state machine. It can keep states. So if you create an array and you keep pushing into the array, the server knows that array is in memory, and the server is able to understand that array and access that array at any time because it's in memory. As soon as you restart your server, that gets thrown out of memory, and your array, which may have had several users in it, now has nothing in it, right? So it's lost its states. So if you were going to keep this chat room, up and going, and you're going to make sure that you're going to register users, you would want to pair this with a database of some sort. But our chat room's not going to be that way for now. It's just going to be, as long as our server's on, the chat will know who's inside the room, and it will constantly keep track of messages. As soon as that server gets restarted, well, everybody gets kicked out of the room, and all the messages are gone. And that's because we have nothing storing that data, you know, forever, like maybe a Mongo, or probably not an SQL, but probably like a NoSQL database of some sort. And so, you know, in order to, you know, hold these users and these users' information, we're going to need to declare some variables here at the top. So I'm going to have some users, and I'm going to have, you know, messages. Eventually, these users are going to be able to send messages, and I'm going to default them to arrays. So while my server is actively, you know, running and not being restarted, all this data will be stored in memory for the server to access it at any time. So now that I have, you know, these little stateless DBs here, you know, these little objects here, or arrays here, I can create a user, and I can add my user to the users list so that I, the server, know who's in the chat room. So then I might want to create a little bit of an object here for the user. I might want to store some information about the user. And so the first thing I might want to do is obviously store the name, and that's going to be the username here. And, you know, a lot of times we like to store IDs. We like to give our users IDs, right? If you were actually putting these guys in a database, you'd have an ID associated to that row in the database. And here we do get a little bit of that for free because when a connection is made, a unique socket ID is created. So if I connect once, I get a unique socket ID. If you come over and you connect, you're going to get a unique socket ID, so on and so on. That's just generated behind the scenes for free with Socket.io. So we can ensure that this variable ID is unique. But username may not necessarily be unique in this case, right? Like Sydney could join and get a socket ID of 1, and then another Sydney could come along and join, but her socket ID would be 2 maybe, right? They're not necessarily ordered. They're just RNG, these socket IDs. So now that I have this, you know, this user, I would probably want to, you know, do users.push and put my user inside this array up here. And now I need to, you know, the view portion has let me know, the view portion has said, hey, I'd like to add this user. And now I need to know, as the server, I need to tell the view portion, hey, I've added this user. So the server needs to go ahead and emit an event. So it emits a new event, and it might just be like, hey, you know, this is a successful join. Hey, this is a successful join, and here's the information I'm going to give you about this successful join. All right. So this is the server side right now that we're doing for the joining. So we need to now pair that with something going on inside of our view, right? We don't want to get too far into the code and not have this run. So we'll go to app.js here. So here in app.js, this is just a little bit of a template. A lot of this should look very familiar. You guys have done a lot of this with Albert. So we have some chat components, right? And there's just a template with some HTML. This HTML is empty. We have a user component, pretty empty right now. So 2 components right there. And then we have a view app. We got some data right in here, right? We're trying to find out if somebody's logged in, a username, who's in the room, you know, the message, and then all the messages that are inside the room as well. We have some methods here that we're going to implement. And then we're registering our components to that view app down here, right there. And then we have some client-side socket events that we're going to handle that we haven't necessarily touched yet. So are there any questions just about this empty file right now? Like this should be kind of familiar from last week, week before-ish, right? Okay. So glad that works. All right, so we're going to have something on our front end, so we're going to look at our HTML here real quick. And at some point in time, let me start this up real quick. So server, no, examples, server. Oh, chatApp, server. So I'm going to run this with NodeMon. which just means every time I save my server, it restarts for me. So localhost. So this is kind of my chat app right now, not too much happening, right? So if you had just downloaded the code and you had just started the server, this is what you would have seen. I haven't done anything magical to make this happen. So right here, you know, I might want to join the room, so I could type my name and I would hit join. And join is how I'm asking to be let into the room here. So I just wanted to show you that because that's happening right here. So I'm basically saying, hey, if the user's not logged in yet, then show them this little login box. Let them type in a username, and then let them click a button which, you know, fires this on-click event called join user. Okay, and so that leads me to this method here called join user, right? And so join user is going to be responsible for allowing somebody to join the room. So the first thing that we want to say, you know, maybe we want to just make an if statement like, well, if they don't type anything, so, you know, if this username, you know, let's just return, like, let's not do anything. If they don't type anything, they can't get into the room anonymously. They have to at least type one character to get into the chat room. So we're not really validating who they are. We're just saying you can't just be an empty string to get into the chat room. That's all we're saying there. So if the user hasn't typed anything, you know, we're just gonna return early from this function. We're not gonna allow them to do anything. We're not gonna allow them to click that button right there. Otherwise, you know, let's go ahead and emit this socket event. So, first we gotta require an IO. So sorry, I skipped ahead. So down in the bottom here, I did require this package socket.io for the front end right there, right? So you saw in other times when Albert's been using, doing Vue, you know, when he's using Axios, right? He requires that in down here on the script tag. So this time we're replacing Axios with using WebSockets. So we don't need Axios. We're not going to be making any HTTP calls. We're only going to be communicating with our server via sockets. So instead of using Axios here, we're just using the distribution for socket.io on the client side, right? I said they had a server side, and this is their client side. So you can actually see it's titled right there in the name, socket.io clients. And so now, just like we could with Axios, we now have access to that variable up here. And so we can say, hey, let's make the socket instance, and we'll just initialize you know, the IO events. So IO is given to us by requiring it, by adding that script tag for socket.io. And we are going to go ahead and instantiate that, or ask to run that function, and we're going to set that equal to socket. So now we have socket available to us down here. So here we can go ahead and emit an event. So we can say socket.emit, and we've already created this event on the back end, right? So this should be kind of familiar here, where on the back end, do a double view. It's a little tiny, I know. But here we have this join user, and here we have this emit to join user. So this socket event emits here, and it gets picked up here in our server, right? These names match. So when we emit this comes over to our server. It says okay, and we passed in the username here, which is this argument here. And so then we're able to build this cute little object, and now we're emitting back to this Vue app. So we don't have anything inside our Vue app yet, just to handle the successful join, right? You can see there's nothing over here yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh God, no more, stop with that. I would like not to have that. Oh, I think I just closed that. Close that, okay, there we go. Perfect. So now we have to handle this successful join, right? So down here, you can see I sort of cleared this placeholder in my code already for client-side socket events. Really convenient. So let's go ahead and add this, client-side socket event so that I know it's going to be socket on, and I already know it's going to be successful join. And I already know I'm going to be getting an object back. I'm going to be getting that user object back right here. And so now I'm able to go ahead and handle, going ahead and putting it into my front end users array so that my client side knows, who's there. So I can say app.users.push user right there. And oops, this is not meant to be that. It's meant to be one of those. Sorry, typo. And since right now I have a logged in as false, I may want to go ahead and say, well, hey, obviously if I got this successful join back, then I can say, app dot what was that, logged in is now true, right? So we can now hopefully join our chat room. So it let us in here and join, but we haven't figured out a way to display that information just yet. So as the user component has no information there, right? It's commented out. So now we want to display, maybe up here, all the users inside the chat room. And that's what we're going to use this user component for. So you can see here that commented out. So let's go ahead and fill this in. So we know that we're going to have some active users. So maybe we could make, just a title, say, active users. And then maybe we could, say how many active users there are. So we could just say users.length, right? We got the props users inside of here for us to use. And we can close that tag. So now we can see that, how many active users we have. And now we have to iterate over this list. So we might want to use, an unordered list tag and use a view for loop here. So view for equals user and users. Right, then maybe what we'd want to do is just put an li tag here, right there, and then just say user.name, li, and then close this unordered list right there. Okay, so now we can try to give that a go. So we've refreshed. So now we can see it works, right? We've told the server that there's that. So to sort of prove that this works, you can just paste this in another tab here, and something's not working yet because it should say active users and list thing, but we're gonna figure out why that's not working here in just a second to show you other events that we need to sort of build in here to make sure that every time somebody connects to the chat, that this is fresh, right? Right now it's not fresh because every time I connect, right, you can see that it keeps coming back with 0, and there's a reason for that. So we're going to fix that. Okay. All right. So let's fix that real quick. Now that we have that, let me open this back up. All right. So what's happening here is when I load the web page, right, I'm essentially instantiating a new view instance, right? We can see that here. It says app new view, right? So every time the web page gets loaded, we instantiate a new view instance. So when we load it one time in one tab, the users array is empty. When we load it another time in another tab, the users array is still empty. And so if the first tab starts pushing users in there, and then we load in third tab, well, it's instantiated a new instance, and in that third tab, it's still empty, right? Because it's instantiated with an empty array here. So we need to make sure that when this guy connects, when these tabs are connecting to the server is sort of responsible for all the users. The server says, oh, I see you have a connection. And this is a new connection. Let me go ahead and give you all the users I know about. So we're going to go ahead and create that event in the sockets file in the server. So it's actually, you know, pretty straightforward. So this is going to be our join user. So I'll do that. So when a connection is made, you know, every time the connection is made to our socket server, we can emit this event that will, you know, basically just, you know, it refreshes the users right here. So whoops, that's not fresh. Refresh users and throw the users array at that. Right, so when a connection is made, we're asking the server to send to the view client all the users that it's aware about. And so then on the view side, we have to, you know, handle this matching event. So you sort of have to continue this like ping pong event where you create this event on one side, you got to match it on the other side. Create an event on this side, match it on the other side, right? So we socket on here and we said, hey, we're going to, we want to refresh users here, right? And so it's going to get users. So we're going to do that. So then we're going to say app.users is going to equal the users the server has sent down to us. So we did refresh the server, so now everything's going to go away because the server was killed. So the server actually knows nothing about these old users anymore. So we'll clear all these tabs out here. This is like very annoying that this thing keeps like getting in the way. There. Okay. So now in my first chat app, I can say, it's me. And I broke something. That's great. Did I? Comma? Yep, thank you. Perfect. All right, great. So Sydney, join. And now you can see it's automatically populated in this one. And if I refresh, you can see now it's there, right? Because we're getting that information from the server. Now, the server is sort of our database, but it's only going to be our database for as long as it lives. As soon as the server restarts, which is going to restart a lot because I'm using Nodemon here, it's going to lose that information. That information is going to be flushed out of memory, and we're going to have to start all over again. So now in this one, if I add, you know, another person and they join, you can see that it's still reflected beautifully across all of our applications here, right? So fantastic. So now we want to, you know, maybe send messages because right now there's nothing that's going to happen there because we don't have any server or any socket events or anything to do that, and this button's kind of just dead at the moment. So if we look on the front end, we can go up here and we can say, hey, you know, we have this message. So I've commented in the code here that this is where the message form lives. So you can type your message, and then when you click send message, that will go ahead and send the message up to the server to be stored. So this time we can you know, go ahead and deal with the send message event. So go to our app, and this is our send message function. And so we might want to do the same thing. You know, we don't want anybody sending empty messages. You know, empty strings aren't going to help anybody. So if it's an empty string, you know, let's just return early. Let's not send that, you know, to the server. Otherwise, let's go ahead and emit an event, you know, called maybe send message. So send message. And when we send that message, you know, we need to say, you know, it's a couple of things. You know, we need to say it's probably the message, which would be this dot message, and we probably would want to say, you know, who the user is for this message, because that's always helpful. This dot user name. Okay. So now we have, who sent the message. And then on the socket.js side, we have to handle that, right? So we have this socket on join room. So now we need a socket on send message. And this is going to be a message. Right. And then we're going to want to put the messages, or this message, inside all the other messages. So messages.push, this message here. And then maybe we're going to want to send a successful, situation back to the server to say, hey, you know what, we did indeed get this message. Oops. So successful, we could call it successful message. And all we need to send back is we'll just send back the message itself to say, like, we received it, and hey, here you go. Here's the message that you sent us, and we're saying that we got it back. And so now we need to handle this again on this side to say, like, hey, we have this socket dot on successful message, right? And this would be the message, right? So we're saying, hey, this person is listening to this, so we're going to add app.messages.push the message in there. Right, so you can see again the flow that we've clicked the button. This goes to the server, it sends the message. Server says, yes, I picked up the message. I'll add it to my messages list. I'll send you back a successful, that I've done that. So it emits back the successful message. And then we come back here, it says, okay, I heard you tell me that you added that to your message list. Let me go ahead and add that to my message list as well. So we've saved the server, so we're gonna have to restart. So now I can do this, and hopefully this guy will work here. So there's some error, not in the server, so maybe here. So I type everything, send message, successful message. Did I type that wrong? Oh, we got to implement the chat component, my fault. So we need to actually print the messages here. So it's probably there, it's just there's nothing here to display the messages. So that's not bad. So now we want to display all these messages. So we might want to do something similar here, but instead I'm using the word content to represent messages. So I'm going to have to say for data, and actually I should use the word messages. There we go. Data and messages. And then we want to say that it is data.message. And we probably need to include the user in here. So let's make this a paragraph tag instead. And then we'll actually do strong. Sorry, I'm just HTMLing right now. And then this is going to be data.user. Strong. Don't want to close this span. And then set a line break, and then I'll put the message here. So I'll get rid of this li element. However you want to format this is like up to you guys. Like you don't have to format it in the same way I'm formatting it. This is just a display thing. So we're basically just looping through the messages, and we're saying, hey, you know, print the username in bold and print the message, and just print our line break and then print the message. So now we can refresh. Although oh, did I add my chat component to here? Chat component, users components, chat component, bind messages, props messages, data in, v4 data in messages. Well, okay. Hello. Oh, I was in a different tab. Where are you going? See, so let's make sure it's here.
City?
Yes. Do you see the error?
Well, could it be that you rename content to messages?
Well, I named it messages here, and I named it messages here, and then I have messages here, and I'm pushing the messages. It should be okay, and I don't think I have any reference to content on the front. So I think I've renamed it all. And that's just a bind content. Oh yeah, thank you. Actually, that's it. Boom. I think that's right. So I've refreshed, I have to join again. Hello. Thank you, whoever said that, appreciate it. Sometimes you can't see it when you're that far in there. Okay, so now we have that message here, but you can see that we don't have the messages are not populating across here, and that's also because we need to do sort of the same thing we've done with refresh users. We need to add this refresh messages, so that way when we make a connection, the messages are added on connection. So we can just do the same thing and then change these two to messages as well. And then of course we need to make a matching socket event on the back end to say, hey, whenever somebody connects to me, you know, refresh the message content so that everybody is getting these messages across the board. So I've restarted the server, so everything's going to go away again. Messages is not defined. Neat. Oh, you're right. Perfect. There we go. So we'll just refresh all of these tabs so they all have fresh connections. So now we're in the first one. So if I join, I could say hello. And then, neat, okay. So now we're sort of at this interesting problem where it thinks that basically all of these people here are me, right? So this one's actually me, but this one's a little confused. It doesn't know who I am or who it is. And so if I send this message again, it doesn't allow this user to join. So we need to handle a little bit of information in here, especially on this like successful login and refreshing content. Oh, let's get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. So there's like, you know, some data to manage on these socketed events. So we want the socket, you know, when we join to understand, you know, who I am. And so every time we get a successful join, you know, we sort of need to manage, you know, like, hey, who am I versus somebody else who just refreshed this socket. So this approach right here, just saying like, hey, on a successful join, this person's logged in, because you have to remember, like, everybody's coming into this instance, right? And we don't just want everybody to be logged in as true. So we need to do a little bit of checking here to say, like, well, hey, if the user.name equals the name that was actually submitted at the time of completion of this form, then let's go ahead and say that this person is indeed logged in. Otherwise, let other people continue to log into this chat application here. So now when we refresh, we can see that it doesn't necessarily think that. So I can log in as another, I can join, and now this one doesn't think that it's logged in already. It now understands that, hey, this person hasn't typed anything, and so one more. You can see that now each person is themselves. So if I say, who am I? I'm one more. And then, who am I? You can see I'm another. And then you can see finally, it's actually me, which is me. Right, so you can see now that we're sort of handling these different use cases across the board. All right, and then finally, the one thing that we needed to, so we have 3 people in our chat room. It's a very popular chat room. And maybe this person, one more, that's who this one is, maybe they leave the chat room. Well, it looks like they're still in the chat room. So we got to figure out how to get them out of the chat room when they actually disconnect. So there's actually an event for that built inside of socket.io. So we can go back to sockets, and there's just a built-in disconnect feature. So we can say socket.on disconnect. Did I spell that right? No, I didn't. So we don't really care. We're not accepting any arguments on disconnect. We just know that that the user is going to be disconnecting. We know somebody's disconnecting. And the great part about this is, every time a connection is made, I said you get a socket ID, right? You get this unique identifier. So on the disconnect event, I don't need my front end to pass over who you are, because I already have your unique socket ID on every time you're sending messages, everything you're doing. I know who you are because I have your unique socket ID. So I can do users, and I can just find you, basically just by filtering out. So I can say, hey, I want to look through all my users, and I want to know where the user ID that I created earlier up here on line 18 is not going to be equal to the socket ID. So I'm basically creating this new array, or I should actually strict equals that. There we go. So I'm using filter to return a new array, and I'm going to take the person who fired the socket event with their socket ID. I'm going to take them out of the array with filter. And then I can emit an event that I've already actually created up here, which is called IO emit. And then we're going to refresh users. Right, and so we'll fire that event. Make sense? Does anybody have any problem with this line of code? Okay. Well, at this point, I can no longer use const. And since this seems to be a perpetual problem with people not understanding, you need to use let, because I've reassigned it. So even though I've been pushing and hopping and pulling and all that, I could use const all the way up until I decided to reassign it. Now I've reassigned it, so I have to use let. All right. So my messages can still be const because all I'm doing is pushing, but my users need to be let because you can see there's a reassignment happening here. So we'll try that. I've broken something. It's very unhappy right now. Reference error, user not defined. You're right, it's not. Sure.
For those that might not know the difference between const and let, they use like a letter like ESLint, they might be it will catch most of your errors.
It's true. Or if I were to const this, linter's the best. I agree.
Yeah.
But even if you weren't, if you were to do this, and as soon as this function fires, it'll tell you that you've misused the word. So here, if I join, that might have been it firing right there. So it tells you right here in your terminal too, that you have a type error assignment to a constant variable. So, I mean, yes, linter, I agree, best, but if you don't know and you just safely make everything const, as soon as you mess up, it'll tell you you've done the wrong thing and you need to make it a let as well. So go ahead and refresh these. So now I can join, and then another person can join. And now you can see that when I close my tab, my active users are gone. Okay. Are there any questions so far with the socket events? No? Makes sense? Okay. Yeah. Probably the limit would be what your server could support. In terms of data, the actual limit you can transfer a lot on a socket, but 1 meg is the actual, like what is the recommended amount. Once you go over 1 meg, you have to manually increase it on the socket size, and it's actually not recommended. But it would just be what your support or server could withstand at that point. Any other questions on sockets? Okay, so 2 things. 1 is lab, and 2 is, hopefully everybody read my Slack. There's a extra credit quiz that I'm going to post on CSNS. It's not required. If you don't want to take it, you can leave. No points lost. If you want to take it, you can take it. Maybe points gained, maybe not. It's not a group effort. Quiz is very short, mostly multiple choice, and then I think there's 2, maybe 3 fill in the blanks. I can't remember how many added. I don't remember, maybe 2 or 3, but whatever you're typing is very short. Like if you're literally short, like if you're typing more than 50 characters, you've done too much. And it's not, it's like super short. CSNS, yeah. So I'm only going to open the quiz for, so here's the thing. The quiz is only going to be 10 minutes long because A, it's short, and B, if I left it open for hours, you could just type the code and you could run it and then you could paste your answers in, and that would be like unfair. Because I know you guys are pretty smart. I mean, I would, right? So that's this thing here, extra credit quiz. So it's only going to be open for 10 minutes. So yes, obviously, if you have like lightning typing, you can't copy the code. That's nice because it's a picture. got that. It took that much. Halfway there. But yeah, so you could copy, or you can't copy, but you could type super fast. You could run it super fast, and you could obviously pass super fast. It's not that many points. I think it's like 15 points. The points go to like your lab or your homework grade, so not to your midterm grade. So like any extra credit points apply to that percentage of your grade. Is there any questions on the quiz? Like I said, it's not mandatory, so if you don't take it, I hope you guys online are listening. It's going to be sad if you're not. Let me make sure there's no questions in Slack. No questions in Slack. Yes. JavaScript. You know what it's about? Because I'm going to start the quiz in just a second. It's about let and const because it drives me crazy personally. Like I have like heart palpitations when I see you guys using it wrong. And so that's really what it's about. It's just making me feel better. I'm going to sleep well tonight, So if you know the difference between let and const, it's like free 15 points. And if you don't, then it's probably like 0 points. But you don't lose any points, so it doesn't matter, right? Okay. It's just like literally, it's a multiple choice and the 2 choices are let or const. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's a couple of fill in the blanks that are just like basic JavaScript understanding. Maybe I could get, if you get close, I'd give you like maybe partial credit on that. But on the let and const, like probably not gonna give you partial credit since that's a 50-50. Like probably, you know, if you just go all the way down, you're bound to get 1 right. All right, oh, that's the grades. Well, nobody's got a grade yet, so that doesn't matter. Edit, that's this guy. Okay, so what is now? I don't even know what now is. No, it's like down here. You gotta do 17, right? 17. Okay, 17, okay, we'll do 17, we'll do 10. We'll do 10. That'll give me a couple of minutes. Done. And then, no, definitely not that long. 17, no, 20, I can math. I'll give you 1 minute, like so 20:59, that's a bonus minute. All right, done. So see, it's just like, all you have to do is type, we'll read the instructions now, since I have a couple of minutes. All you have to do is pick the correct use of let versus const. Multiple choice. There are few text-based replies. If it is, when you're typing, if you think the answer should be an array, type the little brackets. If you think the answer should be an object, type the little brackets, they're matching. If you don't type the little brackets, then I'm just assuming you think it's a string. So you may lose points. Well, you know, not lose points, but you may not get it right. There's not going to be any arrays of objects. I didn't want you to type that much. Like I said, you don't even type a lot. Like it's like less than, all of them are less than 50 characters. Not even that, like 50 characters is super generous. Some of them are like literally 1 character. So, you know, it doesn't even have to type that much. Which obviously if it's 1 character, it kind of gives it away that it's not an object or a thing. Okay, so I'm saving that. So like in 2 minutes, it'll be exciting for everybody in here, right? I'm excited. I hope you guys get it right because then you'll always use the right let and const, and every time I grade, I'll just be like happy. Man, this is like 2 minutes to even research let versus const. This was so nice of me. Okay, hope you guys on the virtual world are paying attention. We'll go over the answers too in class. It'll be fun. I'm gonna do the lab after. I'm gonna go over the lab instructions. Oh. Oh, I feel like there's a question in here. Chat. Oh, okay, good. Everybody's ready. Exciting. I missed your question, but I'll answer. When was the the connection event is fired when the browser loads the page. Oh, I hope that answered that. Okay. Boop. Oh, is it live? Yes. It's pretty quick, I think.
the quotes, do you include the quotes?
I mean, it's nice, but if you don't, I wouldn't take points off for the quote portion. Just the brackets. Brackets are important. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, I feel like that's right.
Okay.
If I typoed, I'll give you the point for free, but I don't think I did. Oh, it's getting close. Yeah.
And for the last question, it says the score is 100, the grade is F. And then it says if grade is greater than 90, isn't it supposed to be score greater than 90?
Oh, maybe I did typo. It's fine. I'll give you the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to go over it now. So it's closed. I don't think it auto grades. I wish it did. It would save me so much time. But we can go over the. It didn't. It allows you to submit still. I don't know. It says it's closed. I don't know how that works.
Oh, okay. Should have saved
I think it auto-saves.
The auto saves?
it.
I don't know. I have no clue. It is extra credit, yes. Okay. I think I did have a typo, so I think everybody does get a free point. So you have 1 point at least. If you attempted the quiz. If you didn't even attempt it, then that's sad. Okay. I think if I click the view button, oh hey, I can't see it. Great. All right. So anybody have an answer for this one, or you just const? Yes, should be const. Anybody want to take a stab at what it should log? Really?
No, so you're not gonna.
Yes. So this should be. So hopefully you guys did the brackets on this one. It should be Toyota, Honda, Audi, right? Makes sense. Gotta have brackets. Hey, yes. It's a string. I said that. We started that off. I said you gotta include the brackets. If you didn't include the little quote marks, but you had the brackets, I'd be fine with that. Okay. Which keyword should be used to declare car? Const. All right. Which keyword should be used here? Yes. What gets printed out?
2018.
Yes. What gets here? Yes. What is here? Yes. Oh. Const. What about this one? Yes, const. Const, yes. What about, what? 2, 3, 4, yes. This one. What? And this is where I had the typo. I'm so depressed. It is F, but it also should have been score greater than 90.
Because when did you like, and not a number is not greater than 90?
No, it would still compare, but I just don't know whether the value of I don't know off the top of my head whether the value of a string F is greater than a 90.
Because I thought it was like when you use a numerical value, they both get Wait, so number 7.
So number 7, the coercion doesn't necessarily happen. No, it's not necessarily. What 7? 7 is const, yes. It will evaluate as const. 6 is let because it's inside the for loop.
I missed 2.
Okay, neat. All right. It's like I said, it's only extra credit. So you know you don't really lose anything. You only stand to gain something. But let's talk about things that aren't extra credit. That's the lab. So the lab is not optional, or I guess it could be if you don't want 50 points. It's up to you, not me. So we're going to take what we did in class today, and we're going to add some features to make it actually cooler. So yeah, cool. Or neat. No, definitely not. It's already been due. It's been due for weeks now, guys. Yes, we'll change the due date. I don't even know what today is. That's lab 4, that's 15th. Whoa. I don't know about that. I'm gonna say Wednesday. It's not that many features. Cool. Yeah, lab's already doing 3-4. I already gave you an extension. When are senior design things?
The 21st.
The 21st? How? What? This is 59. I'll do Thursday, but I really want to get started grading. You know, like every time you have a lab, like I gotta grade it, and I'm trying to budget my time as well. Now I have to work on the weekend to grade it. All right. So seriously, we're going to add a feature so that usernames are unique, and it should be case insensitive, right? So if I join as, you know, just unique in the instance, you don't have to add a database. It doesn't have to be forever unique. You don't go crazy. So if your server is live, you know, and I join as Sydney, nobody else should obviously be able to join as Sydney. In their current implementation, that's true. You could just type Sydney, and then somebody else could type Sydney, and we could all just be a dozen Sydneys in there chatting with each other. So we want to make sure that usernames are unique. It should be case insensitive. So just like your email address, right? Like Gmail doesn't care which part of it's capital versus not. So making sure that, you know, your check is case insensitive as well. So you want to make this check of usernames on the server side. And that's obviously because your server, you know, is sort of where you're housing all the data. So don't make that in the, make sure that's on the socket.js file if you're using my files. Have the server emit a new message. You could call it whatever. I'm just making suggestions. Failed join would be great. And make sure your client picks that up and gives an error to the user that says, hey, I failed to join you to the chat room. So if we look at here, and so if I say I'm Sydney, yeah, while you guys were taking your quiz, I made all these changes. I'm just kidding. But But you can see here down the bottom, I have this little error message, right? So somebody's already in there, Sydney. I tried to join Sydney. It says, hey, your username's already taken, so you need to join something else. And you can see it doesn't let me join, right? I'm over here. And this is somebody else trying to impersonate me or whatever, doesn't matter. Huh? Yeah, I like it, okay, perfect, solved. I'm in. Okay. So to add a feature so that every user has a custom avatar, you can do this really simply with this cute little site called robohash.org. And in fact, I'm going to upload an example that's a little bit more robust than the one we did in class and already has like a small example of this. But if you go to robohash, you can see that you can just type, anything in here and it'll generate, random avatars for you. So you don't really have to do too much work. You just have to use this little site that's already does that. So you can change it. I don't care which one of these you use. You can get custom kitties or robot heads or alien faces or whatever. So it's super simple. And then if you just actually type it up here, right, that's my random custom avatar. That's not very attractive, but that's fine. So it makes sense. You don't have to do too much work. So use robohash to generate unique avatars based on username. So the avatars will be inherently unique. If your usernames are unique, then your avatar is going to be inherently unique because the usernames are unique. Store the avatar information in your content object. That's why I had the typo of content in there earlier. This should be in your, sorry, I believe this is the message object now. Although I think in my demo I have content, so I'll just put or content object. You want it to be where you're storing your messages, right? So we stored the username inside the message object. So you're gonna wanna store the avatar in there because when you're in the chat, if we go back over here and I say hello, you can see that my little avatar pops up next to my name, right? So you want to make sure that you're storing it inside of that message object so that you can put it right here inside of the messages as well. Okay, great. All right, so store the avatar in your message or content object or whatever you decide to name that object. The avatar image should be displayed, use a data binding. So use something like this and don't use this bsource equals robohash. So in the example that I'm going to upload, I'm actually using this thing on line 17 here, right? So I have an example I'm going to upload which just uses the same robohash for everybody in the chat room. So don't just replace it and just put like unique username in here. You need to do a little bit more work than that to figure out how you're going to be storing it inside of that message object so that you're displaying it using this style of data binding on 16 and not just sort of reusing my code on line 17 here, okay? So think about that. And then you want to add a feature that displays a welcome message to the user after they're logged in. This is where you're going to create a new view component that shows the welcome information, include the user avatar and username, and also use the data binding again for that. So I should be seeing things like this and not things like this. And that's this right here, right? So this little component is not that many lines of HTML. Don't think that, please don't write 65 lines of HTML to do this. It really wasn't. I think it's no bigger than the ones we've done already up here. It's no bit larger than these to get that. And I actually already have, I think the CSS styling I have is already, I'm just gonna upload the styles sheet I have. So you'll get this for free if you use my CSS classes, the styling that I have here. If you don't, that's fine. It doesn't have to be styled as nicely as this. But you should have something like this. So I'm gonna take some screenshots of these 3 features. As you can see here, my to-do, my homework for this evening. Let's take some screenshots of that so that you have a picture reference. Are there any questions about this lab? So you already have a jump off point. I'll upload this sample code this evening. Any other questions? Okay, let me make sure there's none online. None online. All right, You're free to go. Obviously, there is lab, so if you want to work on this now and not wait until the 19th, you can stay. Or if you want to leave and go watch Walking Dead, that's fine.